Hey everyone, Suzette here. I am going live to reach out and share some wisdom. Um, I read a lot of books and I like to read books that bring comfort to me or some kind of encouragement. And I've been diving into a book called A Path with Heart, a guide through the perils and promises of spiritual life by Jack Cornfield. And there's actually a section in here that really speaks to challenging times and getting through adversity. It's called Turning Straw into Gold. And it starts with to undertake a genuine spiritual path is not to avoid difficulties, but to learn the art of making mistakes wakefully, to bring to them the transformative power of our heart. So, right there is a speaking of how important the heart is in our spiritual growth and ascension as humans, as spiritual beings living a human experience. And it goes on to say, every spiritual life entails a succession of difficulties because every ordinary life also involves a succession of difficulties. What the Buddha described as the inevitable sufferings of existence. And I hear different people say Buddha or Buddha. So yeah, if anybody knows the correct pronunciation, I sure would love to honor that. So yeah, let me know, okay? Um, so I'll go on with in a spiritually informed life, however, these inevitable difficulties can be the source of our awakening, of deepening wisdom, patience, balance, and compassion. Without this perspective, we simply bear our sufferings like an ox or a foot soldier under a heavy load. And it brings to mind yesterday's video about the 10 of wands because this is the weight that this piece is speaking of, the heavy load. So in a spiritually informed life, difficulties are inevitable, but they can also be the source of our awakening, of deepening wisdom, patience, balance, and compassion, not just for others, but also for ourselves. And then it goes on to say, like the young maiden in the fairy tale Rumpelstiltskin, who is locked in a room full of straw, we often do not realize that the straw all around us is gold in disguise. The basic principle of spiritual life is that our problems become the very place to discover wisdom and love. With even a little spiritual practice, excuse me, the basic principles of a spiritual life is that our problems become the very place to discover wisdom and love. With even a little spiritual practice, we have already discovered the need for healing, for stopping the war, for training ourselves to be present. Now, as we become more conscious, we can see yet more clearly the inevitable contradictions of life, the pain and the struggles, the joys and the beauties, the inevitable suffering, the longing, the ever changing play of joys and sorrows that make up human experience. Difficulties, our challenges that don't happen. I mean, they happen to us and without approaching them correctly. For example, fear. Fear is part of the stress response. of our nervous system. And what happens when stress becomes a part of life is that it can start to feel natural. It can start to feel like your normal way of being in the world, stressed out. It starts to, like when you're in a room that smells a certain way, it's like pretty soon you just become nose blind to it because it becomes normalized. And this is what happens when fear becomes normalized, is when it's going to do its most damage, because then our belief systems, our heart is not informing the mind of what's in the heart. And so we start to live within the beliefs that we're born into. And history of a lot of us have been traumatized. There's a lot of trauma in the world. And people just have learned to become fearful. So I am really, really excited about this masterclass this evening. It's the latest session of transforming fear into heart-powered intentions. Because it's so really, like, it's so important to be self-connected, heart and mind. The heart and mind has to be strong because that is where everything grows from. Every positive change you can think of grows from the heart space. And, you know, these times are calling for it really, really bad. So it starts with us, it starts with ourselves, it starts with strengthening that heart mind connection in the individual. And then as the individual is self connected, then it's about connecting with others who are also self connected, who understand compassionate communication, who understand that we are energetic beings living a human experience and that we are not our bodies, our mind. We are spiritual first. And we express ourselves, and the will of our soul's blueprint is in our hearts. The soul, the planet has a soul, the planet has a heart, and it's only a one world consciousness that can really tap into the richness and beauty that is in that heart. So when we talk about fear, we talk about self connection as a way to navigate fear. My story, this session, sorry, excuse me, do over. This session of transforming fear into heart powered intentions, I have a very special guest, and she was instrumental in helping me get out of my shell because I was in a shell. And she helped me find my way out. And so I am so very honored to um, hear about her story, how she broke through, because these are the kind of stories that have always inspired me. When I was a kid, that kept me like, okay, I just need to be prepared, and I gotta, and anything's possible. And even through the tough times, that's when these inspiring stories are truly supportive along the hero's journey. So I'm going to pull from the hero's journey dream oracle. I'm going to pull a card. And this is going to set my intention and align with the hero's journey in all of us. And so this is going to be a card for the collective journey. And I'm going to focus my heart, focus my intention, and my intention is for a piece of wisdom that can be a comforting source of wisdom for this collective hero's journey. Ah, card number 2, the quest. Plunge boldly into life. How appropriate. This is a very beautiful card. And it's by Kelly Sullivan Walden, artwork by RASSOULI. You can see that. It's pretty cool. So I will read it for us. The quest. Plunge boldly into life. Plunge boldly into the thick of life and seize it where you will. It is always interesting. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Message. Your perception is most accurate when it's inside out. You've crossed the threshold from the ordinary world into the special world. It is here the rules of the ego and polite society no longer apply. In the ordinary world, it was acceptable to run from the things that scared you. In the special world, you walk towards those things with open arms. In the ordinary world, it was acceptable to associate falling with failing. In the special world, it is an invitation to explore your depth. In the ordinary world, it was customary to pretend you don't have a shadow. In the special world, your shadow is where your greatest gifts arise. In the ordinary world, when something was bizarre, you disregarded it as irrelevant. In the special world, strangeness is an indicator of value and importance. In the ordinary world, it was acceptable to blame other people for your difficulties. In the special world, you take full responsibility for your experience. And that is exactly what we will be discussing in a sacred, co-created healing container via Zoom. This is the work I love to do, is to really get into the meaningful bits of what it means to live. I have a previous video on my timeline, and it has the link to the registration. I highly encourage you and invite you to join us. Otherwise, until next time, I will keep showing up and doing what I can to strengthening the heart-mind connection of the planet, of myself, and of the people that I love. So I am sending my love to all of you. And with that, be peaceful. Be peaceful and stay in your heart.